to wherever you are in the world. My name is Brian. This is a Bible study. We are on the book of Esther, reading chapter 4 today. It's a really great study. And if you're here, welcome, especially for the first time. Got a lot of first timers watching us. I really appreciate it. If you are interested in hearing the Bible, studying the Bible, this is the place because what we do here is I read the Bible and I'll read the chapter and I'm just going from front to back. So this is how far I've gotten in the last, I don't know, it's been almost a year or over a year. I wasn't very consistent at first, so that's why we're pretty much only halfway. Plus, lately now I've only been going chapter by chapter or maybe a couple chapters at a time. Often I do that really just because each chapter I think has a lesson, an overall lesson to learn. And as I was reading this chapter this morning, God put it in my heart, I believe, to make the overall theme of this chapter, in my opinion, or be that basically this question right here that I'm about to ask. So, do you want to have true power in life? Is power something that you want? And pretty much the answer I know is going to be yes for most people because we all want some kind of power. It's just basically how much. So that's a better question is how much power do you really want in your life? Do you want just a little bit of power or do you want a lot of power? My guess is that most of us want a lot of power. We want a lot of power. We want control. We want to be able to have control over our lives. Basically do what we want. Be free. And this is what God has given us. He's given us freedom and the power to do whatever we want in our life, not without consequences, of course. He has set boundaries, especially if we want to ever dwell in his presence, after we die, for example. But aside from that, he lets us do what we want, and he doesn't interfere unless we ask him to. And this is why this answers the question for a lot of people of, well, why does all this bad stuff happen? If there's a God, why does all this bad stuff in the world happen? Well, it's not God doing the bad stuff, okay? So it's pretty wrong to blame God for other people's actions. And it's pointless too. Because God is love. And if you want power in life, you need to seek love. And we're going to see in this chapter 4 just how powerful love is. In regards to Esther, who is now the queen of Babylon slash Persia. Well, the queen, right? The king has probably, I don't know, a few hundred, total wives and concubines, but she is like the queen, right? She's the top of the the whole harem. So as much as she has that position of authority, I mean, she really has no other responsibility in her position other than just to be queen and serve the king when, be available when he wants her, nourish and cherish him and, raise any children that they have and bear children, of course, and just enjoy the luxury of being pretty much the richest woman in that kingdom, certainly, possibly the world. So, in that respect, she had a lot of power just in being in that position, right? But she had something even more powerful that increased her power exponentially. And we're going to see that in chapter 4 here of Esther. Okay. And before I start, I've been trying to start off with some prayers, just kind of as I allow people to find this live. Plus, it's good to pray, of course. So, and something I need help with. So, I'm just going to pray a little bit. If you have prayer requests, leave them below. And again, if you have As I read, anything that you hear, you have a question or comment about, leave it in the comments and let's talk about it. This is a study. We're supposed to be studying together. All right. So, dear Lord, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Dear Lord, I also pray for blessings upon anyone who's watching today, especially if they are not a believer and they are here. I just pray that you keep it in their heart to stay here and join us again and hear more of your word and learn and participate. For anyone, Lord, give them the courage to make a comment or ask a question, or to have them reach out to me through email, or on my Facebook pages. Either way, Lord, this is all about your glory. This is all about helping people who either believe in you to increase their faith and grow, or for those that don't believe in you, even more importantly, for them to help plant seeds in their hearts and minds and souls to draw nearer to you and eventually discover you and experience you for themselves, so that they may experience the power and the blessings of your love and your salvation and be accepted into heaven and live fulfilled lives, joyful lives, Lord. I pray for the fruits of the Spirit to come upon all of us, Lord. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. And I pray if anyone's dealing with anything in their life right now, you know what it is. Could be spiritual, mental, physical, financial, relational, whatever it is, Lord, give us the courage, give us the desire to seek your guidance and your help and your blessing and direction in any of these matters and any other matters that I haven't mentioned, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so let's get into this. Chapter 4. Mordecai requests Esther's help. And by the way, if you haven't been here, if you don't know what happened prior to this, so I'll just recap. So in the beginning of Esther, we're dealing with the exiles right now. So the Hebrews, Israelites, were being bad boys and girls. So they repeatedly over years, and so God finally exiled them. He allowed Babylon to come in and sweep them away, take them into slavery, and now they're still there. And so that's where we're picking up. And well, the king, in the beginning of Esther, the king had a queen, and he was throwing a very generous celebration for all the higher end social, economic, or whatever people of the kingdom, all the officers and the officials and stuff. He had a 6-month party, a celebration for these individuals. So for 6 months, there's just nonstop wine and food. And then after that was over, he decided to have another party for everyone else, all the common folk, I guess. So for another week, he said he's going to do that. So for another week, he continued that party, and at the end of that party, he he was half drunk, I think it said, and he said, "Oh, I want to let the people look at my queen," and I forget her name, but Vashti, yeah, Queen Vashti. And so he calls for Queen Vashti, who was having her own party with women somewhere, and a separate, right? So he calls for her to come to him so that he can basically show off her beauty to everyone. And she refused, which infuriated him. So he decided and all of his advisors said, no, that's disrespectful. If you let that kind of thing slide, it's going to have a ripple effect across the kingdom, and wives won't respect their husbands. No, you have to get rid of her and find someone new. So that's what he did. He made like an announcement that, hey, look, any young virgins who are beautiful can come and like basically apply to be queen. It didn't matter who you were as long as you lived in the kingdom. So all these beautiful young virgins went to apply to be the new queen. And there was like a whole year-long process of beauty treatments and dieting and whatever that happened during that to prepare these women just to spend basically one moment with the king and like basically go out on on a date, right? So they spend like a year, more like a year or more, preparing to just go out on a date with the king. And if they impress the king, well, then they may end up being queen. Well, it was Esther who ended up winning that contest, if you will. And so now she's queen, but she's a Jew, and they never talked about it. The king was so captivated by her beauty and loveliness. I'm sure, which and her personality. I'm sure that extends to her personality, her loveliness. And in any case, somehow they never got to. So what are you? Um, but there is a guy who is like the, if you will, the prime minister. He becomes prime minister, and he basically hates Jews. I mean, everyone probably kind of hated Jews a little bit back then because they were like, an exiled nation. But the uncle slash adopted father of Esther, because that's her uncle, she adopted him, or rather, he adopted her, and he would not. He was a very faithful man. So the law was that when like an official went by, you had to bow or kneel or something like that. He refused to do it because of his faith. And this guy Haman was very offended by this and well angered. Really, he's furious by it. It says, and so once he found out that Mordecai was a Jew, he said, "Look, I want to kill Mordecai and all the Jews." So he basically tricked the king in a way to make a decree that all the Jews should be slaughtered a year from that time. I believe it was, yeah, a year. And so now Mordecai is requesting help from Esther. So that's where we pick up chapter 4. Okay. Chapter 4, Mordecai requests Esther's help. When Mordecai learned what had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city, crying with a loud, bitter wail. He stood outside the gate of the palace, for no one was allowed to enter while wearing clothes of mourning. And as news of the king's decree reached all the provinces, there was great mourning among the Jews. They fasted, wept, and wailed, and many people lay in sackcloth and ashes. When Queen Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her about Mordecai, she was deeply distressed. She sent clothing to him to replace the sackcloth, but he refused it. Then Esther sent for Hathach and, no, sorry. She sent for Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, who had been appointed as her attendant. She ordered him to go to Mordecai and find out what was troubling him and why he was in mourning. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the square in front of the palace gate. Mordecai told him the whole story and told him how much money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. Mordecai gave Hathach a copy of the decree issued in Susa that called for the death of all Jews, and he asked Hathach to show it to Esther. He also asked Hathach to explain it to her and to urge her to go to the king, to beg for mercy and plead for her people. So Hathach returned to Esther with Mordecai's message. Then Esther told Hathach to go back and relay this message to Mordecai. The whole world knows that anyone who appears before the king in his inner court without being invited is doomed to die unless the king holds out his gold scepter. And the king has not called for me to come for him in more than a month. So Hathach gave Esther's message to Mordecai. Mordecai sent back this reply to Esther. Don't think for a moment that you will escape there in the palace when all the other Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance for the Jews will arise from some other place. But you and your relatives will die. What's more, who can say who can say but that you have been elevated to the palace for just such a time as this? Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go and gather together all the Jews of Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will go, no, my maids and I will do the same. And then, though it is against the law, I will go see the king. If I must die, I am willing to die. So Mordecai went away and did as Esther told him. So, even though that's a really, really short chapter, there's a lot in there, isn't it? As far as what stood out to me, and by the way, now is the portion where we talk about what we read. So if you have anything, questions, comments, leave them below and let's talk about it. All right. So for me, first thing I noticed is in verse 3, it says, and news of the king's decree reached all the provinces. It says, when news reached all the provinces, there was a great mourning among the Jews. It's interesting to me because I don't know how quickly that happened, but surely it had to have taken more than a day, right? At least a few days, let's say, for this news to reach all the provinces. And yet somehow Esther hadn't heard about it. And she is the queen right there in the palace. So that gives me an indication that she was pretty isolated and just kind of in her own world up in there. All right. And then it says, they fasted, wept, and wailed, and many people lay in sackcloth and ashes. So there was really two points that stood out to me just in that one verse. And, that's that, earnestly, mourning, like, and seeking, like, God's, they were fasting. I'm sure they were praying too. So, because that's usually the procedure when they're doing this is they want to mourn and they're probably just crying out to God like help us God, help us God. And it is effective. God hears us when we do this. So, okay, next thing was the next verse, verse 4, when Queen Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her about Mordecai, she was deeply distressed. She sent clothing to him to return to replace the sackcloth, but he refused it. Excuse me. It did mention that somewhere in here that you can't enter the palace wearing mourning clothing. So it makes me wonder if, she sent those clothes so that he could change so that he could come in and talk to her or something. Anyway, and then in verse 5, it says, find out what showed him while he was in mourning. Yeah, she ordered him. So she went and gets she gets one of her attendants, a eunuch, who was actually the king's eunuch who had been appointed to her as an attendant, maybe like a little spy even, I don't know. But she sent him to go find out what was troubling him because she didn't even know. She had apparently not heard about this decree that her kind would all be dead. And as we're going to see later, Mordecai, says that you would not be excluded from this decree because it's a royal decree that anyone of that faith or that what am I thinking? That race, I guess, nationality, would have to die. So even though the king still didn't know that she was a Jew at this time, he literally just signed her death warrant. Of course, they would have to be able to get to her. So she probably would have survived because the king would have just been like, okay, she's going to just sit next to me. I dare you to come and try to kill her while she's sitting next to me. But in any case, all right. Next point that stood out was verse 8. As to for mercy. Okay, also later. Okay, so I just noted that Mordecai is telling the eunuch, hey, tell Esther to beg for mercy. Um, and then verse 11, she's saying that, so once, excuse me, once Esther gets the message from Mordecai, hey, to please go talk to the king, she's scared. You can tell because she writes back and says, well, the whole world knows that anyone who appears before the king is in his inner court without being invited is doomed to die unless he holds out his gold scepter. So that also makes me wonder if she has some doubts in her mind about where she stands with the king. How much basically power she has over him. Or in other words, how much does he love her? Because that saying love conquers all, and yeah, love can cover a multitude of, sins, for God and for people. All right. Yeah. Oh, and the other thing was that she said, and the king has not called for me to come to him in more than a month. So I just wonder, like, has she not even seen him for a whole month? Anyways, yeah. Then he sends a message back. Hey, you're not going to escape the repercussions of this whole you know decree that has been put out. Even though she probably would have. I mean, because it was up to the people to kill the Jews. Like it wasn't like the army. I don't think the army was going to go out. I don't know. But in any case, if she was standing there next to the king, I highly doubt anyone's going to attempt to kill her. So, anyways, but then Mordecai says, "Well, perhaps you have been elevated to this position for such a time as this." Most definitely, she was. Then Esther. Okay, and then the last couple of things is she decides she's going to go ahead and do this, right? Whether she you know really thought that she had that much power over the king or not, I think she really just came to the conclusion that you know I'm going to have faith in God. Well, plus they also were fasting and praying for 3 days, so that tells us a lot about the power of doing that. How many in here have ever done that? Like fasted, wept, prayed in this type of manner for 3 days, or even just fasted for 3 days. It's very common to see this in the Bible, this whole fasting thing. And yet, like growing up in my house, I know that for sure my mom never fasted. Uh, yeah, I'm pretty dang sure that never happened. And there was no talk of that. And even in the church community that we would go to, I don't recall there being a whole lot of talk. But then again, I wasn't paying much attention back then. So, anyways, but it's interesting though that fasting, I didn't think I would be able to fast. And then a certain thing happened to me. Well, I got leaky gut and started having all kinds of digestion problems. And it led to me having to fast. And now I can fast for even up to like 4 days I've gone. And it's not easy, of course. but it's doable, totally doable. And I'm learning about the health benefits of it. Part of me makes me wonder if God commanded us to do this for the health benefits, at least partially for the health benefits of it. Okay, so yeah, so that was pretty much all I had, but I don't want to, for those who haven't read, I don't want to ruin the story for you. So I won't say what happens. You can go read it for yourself if you want. But we still have a few more chapters. And so stay tuned for either Monday, or if over the weekend I get a craving to study some more, I'll read it. But otherwise, I'll continue on Monday around this time, 11. And by the way, leave a comment and let me know if you would like me to just do a long portion of straight reading without any commentary or prayer or anything. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in, because I'm going to do that. So, all right, appreciate you being here. Blessings to everyone. Peace to you, and we'll see you next time.